Welcome everyone. Welcome to Product School, and thank you for joining me today on this topic of the art and of managing the stakeholder as a product manager. Before we get going, I wanted to give you a quick introduction about myself. My name is Anurag Gautam. I'm a senior product manager at Microsoft. I'm working in a group known as like Microsoft Defender, and leading one of the key initiative here. Fair enough. That's more our introduction part. Let's like quickly jump into the main uh, key takeaways which we are going to have post this session. Uh, I have divided this entire session into six part. Right, first is about identifying the stakeholders. Second is about importance of communications while handling these stakeholders. Third is about the challenging while handling these stakeholders, and next is about the responsibility which as a PM you need to own. And then of course I try to create a framework which is for like mostly like a mapping of the stakeholders, where we can understand which stakeholders fit in what category and whether we need to focus or we wanted to ignore it over the period. And then of course, most last but not least, is like most importantly, how can we start handling our stakeholders to make a successful product career, right? All right, so we have our stage set. So before we jump into our entire content, I just wanted to give you a perspective about my perspective on like what exactly the great management is about. After spending over a decade in the product management in a large and small organizations, I have come to believe that the great product management is 60% substance and the 40% is style. The substance of the product management is the hard skills which you have to learn and excel at to build great product, right? For example, like customer discovery, prioritizing a roadmap, deriving insight from the data, and so much more, right? Uh, but equally important is a soft skill needed, right? Because that helps you to get the things done, right? uh, which means that effective communication I mean influence without authority, executive management, and many more. I think all these things requires effective soft communications. I call I personally call this as a style of the product management. You know what? So I find that the best product manager spends about like 60% on the hard skills, where they usually craft out the right strategy for their product, and the 40% is about handshaking with the different parties, which is there in the ecosystem to make sure they are going to be successful in their entire journey. Trust me, when I mean it's a bit unfortunate also, because when I talk to some of my team members, some of my colleagues, product managers, telling me that their hard works and the great ideas are not getting appreciated. So, in my opinion, it often comes down to a style. When they say too many cooks in the kitchen is hindering the entire process instead of improving it, it's another symptom of lack of style, right? Or when feeling that they lives in the conscience driven organization and decision making is painfully slow, then it's like often related to lack of style. So, how a product manager, learn to improve this their style, right? So, I have found that the highest leverage opportunity is to learn the fine art of being compelling, right? So many of the soft skills associated with the product management comes down to convincing other of your ideas, whether it's a convincing an engineering team, design colleagues of yours, negotiating with a peer product manager, excelling at a product review, getting your project green light, uh, convincing early adopters to try a product. All this boils down to making a compelling argument to the stakeholder involved. So, crafting a compelling argument is a function of the substances of the argument, uh, the style of the argument, and the target audience, right? Uh, Obviously, the content and the merit of your argument are very important, but that's probably where you are spending most of your time already. Equally important is to think deeply about the style of the argument you are going to use. And it's important to consider the style with respect to the target audience, right? Or to key stakeholders you are trying to convince. Since everyone process information differently, So you will want to adjust your style based on what is likely to be most persuasive to those key stakeholders, which you are ideally determining the consulting with the peers, managers, and others that have a prior experience working with decision makers. Cool. What is this stakeholder is about? What is this stakeholder? What do you mean by stakeholder? So it has a different context in the different group. But if you talk about the product management, it's clearly said that a stakeholder can be any person, a group of people, or team which have an interest in the product and its success, can influence product decisions, and are impacted directly or indirectly by the product, right? uh, it's pretty straightforward. There is no much rocket science on this part, right? Well, now let's look into the next one. Why are why do we feel that the communications why our communication skills are so important when we deal when we are dealing with the stakeholders? Obviously, communication skills are not just important for broad professionals. In fact, they play key role in uh, career success in just about any industry or any functions. All right. Why do you feel that why the communication skills are so important for the PMs when dealing with the stakeholders? Obviously, communication skills are not just important for the broad professionals. In fact, they play a very important role in career success in just about any industrial function. Actually, I want to go beyond that. These skills can add many benefits to our lives in general. But in the context of the stakeholder management for PM specifically, we need to take a step back and review both product management plays within a company as well as its key responsibility, right? So if you look into the diagram, right, it clearly shows that the PM sits at the intersection of the business, right, user experience and engineering, right? So you are like a bridge between all these groups. So this reflects one of the major responsibility of the product manager, which means that which is like closely working with other stakeholders from the discipline to define, build, and ship products customer love, right? So and the main point to appreciate here is that each of these teams is a separate world into its own. In most of the stakeholders from each right, they have very different mindset, different perspective, different goals, different considerations, and different constraints. So for this reason, you can't communicate with these different parties in the same fashion. As a truly great product managers, you have to be master at putting yourself in their shoes and seeing the world from their lenses. You must not only understand their perspective but also commit to considering their input and making your best effort to resolve their concerns. And this is how you build up the trust in the ecosystem, and that's why the communication is very critical to managing this stakeholder efficiently. All right. Who are the main stakeholders for the PM? There are a bunch of people, there are a bunch of the team in the organizations who usually you need to keep interacting. But you have to find who are your stakeholders. So I remember, I was reading one of the book uh, called Inspired, I guess, where the definition of stakeholder is very simple, right? It says that in that definition in that para it was saying that the main test of whether a person is a stakeholder is whether or not they have a veto power, right, or can otherwise prevent your work from launching. So in other words, the stakeholder that product managers should always have their on their radar are the one who have an interest in the proposition as well as the influence to help them, moving this proposition forward, right? So the first step is to identify the stakeholders. So you need to understand uh, to uh, to ensure that you are getting a support out of it, you are getting right informations, you are able to influence it, and you are able to take a buy-in in order to progress your product vision. So coming back to who are your stakeholders, you can see a bunch of teams who needs to be engaged. It can be a business team, it can be a sales team, it can be marketing team, it can be engineering team, it can be legal team. Everyone has their own set of things to interact as a like a product managers. So trust me, your customer and the users are surely the key external stakeholder for whom products are built. But when we talk about the stakeholder management, it mainly refers to the internal stakeholder. So as I talked, like business, user experience, and engineering. So once we talk about the business, uh, once you talk about the business, like the executive and the leaders who define the business mission, right? Who define the strategy and will want you to know how your product aligns with that mission. You have a sales team who are close to the customers and can provide valuable feedback to the PMs. In returns, they want to know how your product or new features can compete in the market, right? How these features will able to help their sales goal in the future, or maybe in coming time, in the coming quarter. Marketeer who cares about marketeer are those like who cares about how the company products or services would add a value to the customer life. Uh, they in turn use that the value to create a winning marketing messages, right? Similarly for the operation and customer teams, similar for the finance team, similar for legal team, compliance team, business development team. So what I mean to say is that these are the teams probably you need to interact with on a regular basis. And of course, last but not the least, I mean the engineering department. Engineering department works to build the product and advise on the suitable of like various technologies to use. So this group includes the system architects, developers, quality assurance, and sometimes data scientists, right? Which means that you have to, they are ready to give you the feedback without being a key stakeholder, but it doesn't mean that you are going to ignore it or you're going to accept all the everything. So of course, I treat them as a like one of the key stakeholders. You can see also the yellow one is like your boss. You don't ignore it because the boss is the one who is always a boss. So he or she is always going to be a great stakeholder of yours. But I think as a product managers, all the PMs has to interact with the executive team, sales, finance, legal, operation, your boss, customers, partner, analyst, etc. Fair enough. Why do we feel that this stakeholder management is really a pain, right? Why it is like a challenge? So stakeholder management and communication is the complex, right? And it usually takes more time than planned. By understanding which stakeholders are important and how best to provide the information that meets their need and the need of the organization, it is possible to reduce the difficulty of the communication, right? And the stakeholder engagement. So basically the stakeholder engagement is difficult because it involves a different people with a different expectations and the different information needs, right? Engaging a stakeholder for a collaborative involves constantly vigilance in a constant changing landscape of the relationship with them, right? Where we need a support, where you need their support, interest, and influence fluctuates. Maybe influence can start fluctuating unpredictably. Sometimes it's the politics which makes the life like hell, right? But I think you have to be very smart enough. You have to understand this game of you need to understand this game plan very quickly so that at least you can pitch and you can define your path accordingly. There could be a unshared vision which can create a challenge while dealing as a product manager. There could be a like conflicting objective in the priorities. There may be a miscommunication or less communication which keeps happening between the organizations, which can sometimes create a lots of pain while managing them. All right. Why do we feel that what are the key responsibility as a product managers when it comes to the stakeholders? So you can see the left side, it's very clearly identified. Identify, establish, engage, adapt, understand, bring, and share. But what? So first thing, identify your stakeholders, right? Make sure that you know who is your stakeholders about. Once you know that, establish a trust with them. This is the potentially the most important responsibility. Trust me, if PM don't know who has a stake in the project or product, then they won't be able to communicate effectively with the stakeholders. Without communication, the stakeholder can start losing out the trust very early on, right? Engage with your stakeholders continuously. Once you identify all your stakeholders, make it your priority to consistently in the contact with them. That doesn't mean that every hour, every hour of every day you have to contact them, but the most effective way is to prioritize your communication based on how involved each stakeholder is so far for your product, right? And once you engage with them, just try to understand the vision, right? And constraint of your stakeholders. Figure out where your stakeholders are coming from, right? Take the Taking the time to understand stakeholder is a challenge, and then communicating in a way that that person will understand in a surefire way to prevent the misunderstanding and the get buy-in. So anyway, the key thing is to remember that there is a successful stakeholder management involves lots of communications, right? Which establish the trust. Without trust, that you will be able to address their concerns. You Without that trust, you will be able to address their concerns or implement the visions. Stakeholders may stop listening to you what you have to say and escalate, and potentially blocking you from the product or project from on time or maybe or successful completion. So if a stakeholder knows if the stakeholder knows that you understand their concerns, and you are informed about the important changes and are given a voice to contribute the product vision, then they are much more likely to be in support of your project. So that's the reason why I think it's very important to understand your responsibility as a PM to manage them. Cool. So that's a great thing to have. So this we call as a stakeholder mapping. So once you have identified the key stakeholders, you will need to then need to prioritize them. A very simple and standard tool which industry uses to the like a stakeholder map, right? So in x-axis you can see influence, and y-axis like interest. So you have to identify how powerful are they in terms of the influencing the product outcome, and the interest is like how interested or disinterested they are with the product outcome, right? And based on where the stakeholder gets mapped against these two dimensions, you can create a strategy for engagement, right? So in this diagram you can see that that shows the spectrum of the interest and the influence, and possibly a strategic action which is required. As you move from the inner wave to outer wave, the importance of the stakeholder will start increasing. So those stakeholders sitting on the top right of the diagram are the one that the product manager should put all their effort in order to keep them engaged throughout. Right. Having said that, I'm not suggesting or ignoring the remaining. Right. So you just need to ensure that you are closely working with them, understanding, building a relationship, making sure that you give them importance. You understand what are the like what is the, like how can you avoid some kind of surprises with the help of the communication like that. Well, now next. So, what are some kind of the pro techniques or pro way to handle your stakeholders, right? So, I will talk about my experience, and of course, I will give you some kind of the framework which can be more useful you in the coming time. All right. First thing first, trust is the key. Your stakeholder must be able to fully rely on you when it comes to update about important decision and changes. Show them that you are not only understand their issue and concerns, but that you are also actively looking for a solution to address them. Should your stakeholder believe that they are not being taken seriously, they will either try to escalate the issue, or they will start controlling you. To ensure that it is not going to be happen, it does not get that far. Let's talk about the couple of the steps which can which you can always use and implement for your stakeholders like a professional. Know your stuff, right? So as a product manager, you are the essential connection between these multiple functions. Having a deep understanding of your customer, the product, the technology, the business, and the analytics is a necessary to do the job well, as other rely on your expertise. When you share your knowledge openly and are accessible for questions, you will soon be well respected. Your stakeholders will always will have even more inclined to listen you, right? When you back your reasoning and decision with a real data. So for example, for example, user feedback, right? Users reports, sales details, or like a competition analysis or competitive information. So otherwise you maybe get trapped yourself, fight with the opinion. So make sure that you know your stuff very well. You have a very strong command on that. The next is about building a relationship with your stakeholders. All too often is like a product, uh, stakeholders meeting to gather the requirements. Maybe you just can start sharing the status update, and after a while, what the stakeholder will associate with you is that they will try to they will of course wanted to understand where are you, but they are not the one who really wanted to hear always the a status update. So it's always good to provide the update, but it's more than that. You cannot build a relationship with your stakeholder by providing this couple of updates saying that okay fine, you have given a 10 task and I have done the 5, and this is what the product plan looks like. Instead of that, the focus on building a relationship with your stakeholder, start building the relationship with your stakeholder groups. Sit down with them and listen. The better you understand their concerns and constraints, the better you can find a solution. Be open, be transparent, and ask lots of questions, right? So a collaborative relationship based on mutual respect will get you much farther than standard status update, right? So I would recommend you not just not just do the status update thing, but also build a kind of relationship game, which will help you always in the in your near coming time. Tailor your approach, right? The next one is the tailor your approach, which means that you probably have noticed quickly that your stakeholder usually speaks the different languages. But what does it mean? As they care about different things, they need to be approached in a specific way to for a for a maximum success and collaboration. So there are a couple of things. Of course, we talked in the previous diagram that there are like instead of the engineers, executive, and sales and marketing, which you need to collaborate with. So I will just try to give you glimpses that how can you tailor your approach with them, right? For engineers, tell them what you want the product to do, and especially why, right? Help them understand how the features will benefit the customers. Most importantly, don't tell them how to do their job, right? They will love to figure out they will love to figure out themselves. They don't want any interruption or any feedback. Feedback is always good, but they don't want to do a micromanage these things. uh, with engineers, be available and approachable, but as I said, don't micromanage them. Once it comes to executive, I think you have to be very very crisp and clear, right? So keep it a high level. Don't go into too much of nitty gritty details until unless asked. Focus on the outcome and the results of the company. uh, be enthusiastic and positive. If possible, tailor a story around your product. When it comes to salesperson, right, it's always a difficult to crack. But when it comes to salesperson, always answer the question: how will this product or feature will help them to make more sales? Show them how ideally with the evidence, and the next initiative will help the team sales number, right? uh, you can take the suggestion seriously, but make sure to test any assumptions before adding new feature into pipeline. It doesn't mean that whatever they are saying that you have to keep collaborating them. That's a part of the backlog. Just do all of your 60%, the things which you talked about, and then of course you can start working on them. For marketing team, I think is start collaborating with them as early as possible. They need to understand who the who what are the target user persona is, and how the product fits into the overall the scheme of things in the market. Explain how the product is going to change the life of the customers. Let them develop a compelling story around the product so that it can be more approachable to the everyone. Last, set boundaries. Always keep in mind that you are not building a product based on the consensus of some internal people who do not buy or use it, right? That would result in a terrible outcome of your customer. Okay, so I think we talked about we already talked about some during our past discussion, that how can we say to how can we say no to our stakeholders sometime. uh, Spending the time acknowledging their request and show empathy for the situations. uh, I think whenever you are what I mean to say, whenever you're going to say no, make sure that you are acknowledging the request and making sure that you are showing a right empathy for their situation. It doesn't mean that you can say blindly say no or blindly yes, right? Then I think then provide a reason why you can't accommodate the needs at that moment, unlike the like context free rejections. Sometimes this approach will get you the some kind of lunch invites also. All right, I think we talked about this, right? So I talked about this. If the stakeholder does not have trust that you are going to solve their concerns, then they will either escalate or they will try to start controlling you. All right. So this is the Hippo. So there is a Mr. Hippo is always would like to win, and it always win. There is a reason, right? There is a reason why the Hippo exists. The Hippo stands for the highest paid person opinion. Okay, and there's a reason why this this Hippo is so common in our industry. Everyone has an opinion about what we should build. It's hard, and it's hard to win the opinion battle with the people, especially who are having a higher in the corporate hierarchy than us. In this scenario, what is going to be happening? The person with a different opinion is your boss, right? But it just as easy could have been your CEO, your sales team, your CFO, or insert any stakeholders whom we want to work, right? So it can be anyone. So how to avoid this Hippo pitfall, right? And manage the stakeholders that are more senior to us. So there are like couple of there are like couple of ways to do that, but I think I will talk about I will just try to give you one example. uh, just imagine that you are standing in front of any political leader or maybe prime minister or president of your country, and there is some conflicting situation which is happening with your neighboring country, and 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 you are very adamant that that your country should do some actions, and because of some reasons, right? So do you think, first of all, do you think that there is a chance to influence a political leader based on your theory? Assuming that you are a product person, you don't have any kind of international relation experts, I think if you ask me, I'm going to go with no. So in that case, the political leader has a more information on that particular topic. He has a more access to the more senior experts and has the authority to make the decision. Why should he listen to you? He or she listen to you. The only way you have any influence on that particular thing is about providing the some insights, some bring a new information on the table. The moment you are doing that, you are totally in a different shape, right? People will start listening to you. People will start understanding you. I think the same situation goes with the product manager. So the moment you say that some I'm just interacting with my boss, and how can I start winning that game? How can I make sure that my voices also get heard? So I think you have to bring some insights on the table, and otherwise it will be just like the Hippo will always win. So I think so there are a couple of things, right? I think I just wanted to make sure that you understand this very well. So don't engage in any kind of the opinion battle whenever it comes to the managing the stakeholders. Just like we talked about the political things in a couple of minutes back, you are not going to influence the political leader with your opinion, right? So you are also you are you also are not going to influence your boss or any of the key stakeholders who is more senior to you. If you rely on your opinion alone, the more senior stakeholder has a more expertise than you. They have a more access to the more senior experts than you do, and they have the authority to make the decision over you. The only way to influence a more senior stakeholder is to bring the new information on the table. So instead of going in that directions, I think just bring the new insight on the table and don't waste your time in fretting over whether or not you should be able to make the decision. Don't get caught up with in the needed to be heard or wanting to be trusted. Don't frame the argument as a measure of your self-worth. It's not a measure of your self-worth. Your boss is not ignoring your opinion because your opinion is not valuable. Your boss is ignoring your opinion because he or she can. And that's the nature of the power in the hierarchy, right? So yeah, idea, I mean, what I'm saying is that you are not going to change the power dynamics of this corporate hierarchy. So I would say don't waste your time trying to change it, accept it as a reality, and work in those constraints, and make sure that you are bringing the insights on the table to make sure that the things are getting heard. The next thing is that don't overwhelm your stakeholder with everything all at once, right? So I think idea is that you need to understand we have already learned that team had a no chance, any team has a no chance in a battle to win or the opinion of the leader. So what's wrong in that, right? So that I think any of the team can make a common mistake that they knew the stakeholders were busy, so that they update the stakeholders after they finish their research, after they drew any conclusion, right? So so idea is that what I'm trying to say is that when we only share our conclusion, we are not bringing our stakeholders along with us. We are communicating, for example, research finding as a truth without preparing our stakeholder for that truth, right? So we also are not giving them a chance to integrate their knowledge and expertise when intercepting the findings. We are not allowing our leaders to co-create research conclusion with us. And remember, it's very fact our leader have access to information which we don't have. They have all the access expert which we don't have. They have a more expertise than we do, and we want to leverage all of that when we drew our conclusion, right? So the idea is that we need to co-create with our stakeholders, get their feedback early and often. Don't wait, don't presume, don't think too much of things, and don't wait for so long before we draw our final conclusion. Don't go back to the sense that this is what I concluded. Go back to them and approach them by step, at any any sense, like based on the the need of the type of the stakeholders, right? Last is that do share your work and get a buy-in in every step of the way, right? So I think the more you do, I think that will the more transparent the system will be. The more feedback we will start getting it. For example, you can start sharing an interview snapshot, right? You can invite them to be curious with you, right? You can invite in the particular interview. It hardly matters whether they join in or not, but it gives a sense that hey, someone is really interested to understand me. They will also do their homework and they will come back to you. They will start adding to your thought process that what is missing whenever you are updating them. What would you add, right? What can you change, right? They will start giving such kind of constructive feedback which will be like a very 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 super powerful for your product in the coming time. And trust me, the more you show your work, the more comfortable you will get with the feedback. You will learn to love it when your leader questions your thinking. You will learn how to integrate the feedback and expertise, and your product will be better for it, right? So I think that's the my take on this part. That probably if you can do this, of course, it will make your life much more easier on that on handling your stakeholders. All right. So we are almost we are coming. I'm just trying to sum up with this slide. So and a couple of the final tips, right? I would say that All right, it's like a final tips for us from my side to you guys. Cut it, cut it, cut it. We can resume here. All right, final tips to manage your stakeholders. Favorite short, favor short, frequent updates over the long and frequent details. Right. I think the business stakeholders have their own jobs to do. Don't require them to attend a 2 hour meeting or give them a short burst at a time. Get them excited about what you are doing. Use these updates to build and keep momentum. The second thing is also visuals. That always helps. That like canvases, maps, or maybe flowchart, maybe sometimes trees are becoming more popular for some reasons, right? They help us in communicate. They help us, in communicating a lot of information very quickly. Your leaders are very busy, so be thoughtful about how, what, and when you want communication to be progressed, right? Integrate the feedback you get. So that sounds very obvious. So but if you ask for the feedback and then ignore it, you are not only wasting your time but their time too, and also you are losing a trust. So you have to earn that right to keep getting a feedback. The best way is to do that, to integrate what you heard into the next product iterations. If you don't have to iterate everything you hear, integrate everything you hear, but it but if nothing can changes, the conversation was a waste of everyone's time. The last one is about get a feedback one on one. Too often we try to save time by updating our stakeholder all at once. A big email, a big summary, and you are done, right? But I think this is the rookie mistake. In a group setting, one person, a strong opinion can derail the whole group, right? Always remember this. So one person can derail the whole group. It's hard to truly understand someone concerns when the conversations bounces from the person to person, right? Meet with your stakeholders one at a time. This might feel less efficient, but it will save your time over the long run. Uh, it will also give you a chance to 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 understand him, to understand your stakeholders very quickly and very very closely, and also you will understand what is the reason and philosophy behind giving those feedback. Cool. With the end of this, I think uh, we are end of the entire slide. You can cut this part. I'm pausing it. All right, so we that's it from my side. In case of any questions or any feedback, I would be happy to see on the comment section. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Have a great day. Bye. All right, so that's it from my side. Thank you so much. If you have any question, feel free to post your questions and comments in the comment section. Thank you. All right, so that's it from my side. If you have any question, feel free to post your question. Uh, that's it from my side. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck.